name is Jørn Angeltveit. A lot of people get confused when they see that O with a circle above, with a slash above. Okay? Jørn is pronounced Jørn. Okay? As in the English word to yearn for something. Easy to remember, right? And please, don't make it more complicated. It's pretty easy. Some people, especially Americans, they think, they try to Englify it. And it's urine. It's not urine, it's simply Jørn. Okay? I'm the owner of Optimal Systemer. That's translated to English, Optimal Software Solutions. We are proud sponsors of this event and the event that will occur the next 2 days. And we are the company that has created the Smart Mobile Studio product. Okay, what is Smart Mobile Studio? Why did we start to create Smart Mobile Studio? A couple of years ago, we got a contract to develop a mobile application. Yay, yet another mobile application. There are pretty many applications out there, but we had to create yet another one. We investigated several tools to create this application. Some of these you know, some of these you don't know. Some of these have died, some of them have not lived through. But when we was investigating all this mobile stuff, there was something that was nagging us and bugging us all the time. There was something that kept yelling and yelling at our attention, and that was JavaScript. Okay? You know JavaScript? Yeah. And we were like, okay, we know JavaScript from back in the 90s. We did all the pop-up stuff and we did all this scrolling text stuff. Is JavaScript really up to something? Is JavaScript good enough? And we were wrong. When we started to look about what JavaScript is capable of and what HTML5 is capable of, we found out that JavaScript has become very powerful. JavaScript was initially created to be a lightweight language. It was created to not be object-oriented. It was created to be an alternative to Java, which was the other solution back then. Okay? There are a few links here. If you Google amazing JavaScript tutorials or amazing JavaScript demos, you'll get a lot of hits, and very many of them are very cool. The first one here, JS1K. That's actually a contest to write small JavaScript application in less than 1,000 words, 1,000 bytes, okay, 1,000 characters. And there are pretty many amazing demos there. You have chess playing, you have demos with a lot of advanced graphics, and JavaScript is definitely up for the job. JavaScript has also a lot of influence. You can see all the widgets on the Windows dashboard. You have all those widgets on the right. Those are based on JavaScript. You see iBooks, the interactive elements in iBooks. Those are based on JavaScript. You have lots of examples of JavaScript that the JavaScript has become more and more important. Okay. So the problem with JavaScript is that it's a complicated language. As I see it, JavaScript, it's not an easy language to work with. Okay? Even if it has some good parts. The disadvantages of JavaScript, it's prototype based, so it's not a pure object-oriented solution as we know it, with classes, inheritance, and etc. It has a loose and late binding, which is a disadvantage in my opinion. Okay, take a look at that statement. Have you seen it before? No. That's actually a valid JavaScript statement. Some pluses and some brackets. Can you guess what the result is? It's actually 10. Okay, where did that come from? I can prove it in a second that the result is actually that. What? Have you seen the video on the internet lately? What? If you Google what, you will find a nice speech with lots of examples. I'll take some of them here. If you take in JavaScript an array and add an array, do you know what you get? You get an empty string. Okay? What? If you take an array and add an object, okay, what do you get? Any suggestions? You get an empty object, obviously. And if you turn it around, if you take an object and add an array, okay, you get null. Okay, nothing. What? That's insane, okay? That doesn't make sense at all. Okay, if you take an object and add an object, you'll get not a number, okay? Well, that actually makes sense. That is not a number. Use what you can and make all the best of it. So, we decided to change the world. We decided to make this world better. We wanted to make something good with JavaScript. So our plan was to compile a solid OO language, object-oriented language, into JavaScript. Okay? And on top of that, on top of the compiler that compiles object-oriented language into JavaScript, we created a framework to manage the whole thing. Okay, a framework with an RTL, an VCL, and a development tool. So, and here's the bummer. As many of you have said already, the language we chose was Object Pascal. Okay. We have our own dialect, so it's not exactly like the classical Object Pascal. It's Smart Pascal. So it has a few features that you don't find in classical Pascal. It has lambda methods and etc. What? Okay. Yeah. We all have our pets, and we love them. You see. Well, I can talk about Pascal. I love Pascal, and I have been working with Pascal in Delphi for 15 years. Maybe 20. So Pascal is a very good language. It's easy to learn, it's easy to read, and it's a very good language to work with. Okay. So the code name we started with was Object Pascal for JavaScript, OP for JS. You find that tag a lot of places. Okay. If you go to op4js.com, you'll come to our website. Our first code name was actually not op4js. It was let's put some lipstick on that pig.com. Okay. If you visit that website, you also get our page. Okay, Smart Mobile Studio. The essence of Smart Mobile Studio is to convert ordinary Pascal classes and Pascal code into advanced JavaScript code. Okay, that's a challenge of its own. And the JavaScript code that is generated, it handles the DOM in the web browser through unique handlers. That's a both of these are important points. Okay, you know the DOM? In the HTML document, you have what we call a document object model. So a classical HTML document looks like this. It's actually a tree. So you have the root, HTML, you have a header node and a body node, and you have title, h1, etc., etc. That's the way HTML document is built, like a tree. So for each of the nodes in that DOM object, that DOM tree, we have connection, we have a link in the class. So this class you see here, that's a label class, okay? Do you know how to read Pascal code? Is this strange for you? I think it's pretty easy. Okay, you have a class. The class is called, the type class is called TW3 label. It inherits from custom control. And it has some private fields, caption, align text, and container. It has some protected methods, set caption, set right align, resize, initialize object, and finalize object. It has a container as a public method, and align text and caption as published methods. Okay, this is a class. I think it's very easy to read this class and understand what this class contains. Okay, so this is a standard Pascal class. You have lots of these, and you need to link those up to the JavaScript converted code. The handle I was talking about. You have a handle from the Pascal class to the JavaScript code. You see the handle.value? That's the handle that goes from the object Pascal class into the JavaScript code. That's the link between the class you have in object Pascal and the class that is generated in JavaScript. Okay. As you can see, for instance, the method setCaption, it uses this inner HTML tag. Is there? So when you call the method setCaption, you send in a parameter, a new caption of type string, and a new caption. If the class contains a glyph, it inserts an image. This is HTML code with the glyph and a break line. So this is how we connect JavaScript code and Pascal code. It's a lot of engineering under that architecture. These are some of the classes that are available in Smart Mobile Studio today. Okay. You have buttons, you have listbox, you have images, you have several things. One of the things that is different in Smart Mobile Studio than other tools is that you can actually create your own custom components. Okay? You can create your own custom components and you can use them in your project and you reuse them in other projects. Lots of other vendors, they have not the ability to create custom components. In Pascal code, we also have a section called ASM. In between the ASM sections, you can write raw JavaScript code. Okay? So when you create a Pascal class, you have various class methods. And to create JavaScript code within those, you create an ASM section. And in that ASM sections, you have pure JavaScript code. Okay? And if you prefix any of the fields in the ASM section, that is equal to the field you have in the Pascal class, okay, in the Pascal code. So @result, that is actually a Pascal method. That's a method that is defined and declared in the Pascal code, and you can link that up to the JavaScript code by prefixing with an alpha, with an @ sign. Okay. I'll start up Smart and we can take a look at some of the demos. So, if I start Smart, this is what you see, almost. Screen resize. When you create a new project, we have today 3 different project types you can choose between. A visual project, that's a project with elements you find in the DOM, with an edit field, label fields, buttons, etc., etc. We have a command line project, that's a pretty interesting thing. And you have a game project. A game project, that's a project where you intend to draw things on the canvas. Okay, so you put up a HTML5 canvas and you can draw things directly on the canvas. Intended to make games, but you can of course make other things too. I'll open one demo. Okay, this is a pretty simple demo. So this is the IDE you work with. You have the main area in the middle where the code is and the design is. You have the project structure over here with the files included in the project. You have properties for the visual components over here. And you have the unit structure for the open unit over here. So this is a game application, a canvas application. You have this main class called application. This application has 3 methods by default: starting application, closing application, and paint view. Starting application is fired when the application starts, okay, and you can put in a game view delay. This is how often the project will refresh the screen, okay. So 1000, that's 1000 milliseconds each second. Application closing, not necessary to spend much time in that, and that is also because a web application, it isn't easy to identify when that application is closing, okay? Suddenly users just terminate the session, so you shouldn't put much of code in that application closing section. You have to use another approach to save things, for instance. Okay, the paint view method, that's where all the canvas drawing happens. So you start off with calling the canvas, and you call the method clearRect, and it clears the screen entirely. And it defines some variables here. It gets hours, minutes, and seconds from now time. And you start this section here, draws out some lines on the canvas. Okay, so if we execute this application, yeah, you'll get a simple clock, simple as that. If you visit now on the Smart Mobile Studio Network, if you visit this server address, you'll have this on your phone instantly. Okay, and that's one of the things with the HTML5 applications. It's very easy to deploy. It's very easy to distribute. You can put this up on a server or on a local computer, and you can start it as a server. And if the user visits this server, the application will be downloaded to the handheld device. And with the correct manifest file in that application, the application will be persistent on the phone. So even if you turn it over to airplane mode, the application will still be started from the phone. It's cached locally on the phone. Okay. So this is a very easy method to deploy applications. So if you change this game view delay, if you set it every 10 milliseconds instead, you see that I have a very smoother movement. Okay, it's updating 10 times a second at this approach. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay.
What about debugging the generated code?
Okay, debugging. That's a complicated question because we work on something in the labs. Yeah. Debugging for now, it's not easy because when you generate code, you get a JavaScript code. This is the JavaScript code you get. You have some solutions where you can we are working on it in the labs, so to say, where you can generate a map file for the generated JavaScript source, and you can debug the JavaScript code in your Chrome browser, and you can see the Pascal lines in the Chrome browser as you move along. But that's not in the released version. In the released version, you have to do write lines or anything like that to debug it, actually. So if you do a write line in the application, let me see if we can get this to work.
You can also access the Fireline console, Chrome console, and so on.
Yeah.
Using the ASM block.
Yeah, correct. Okay, as you can, write line test. It writes the thing you have inside here out on the console. If you see here at the bottom, console output. This is the output from each write line you have. Okay, so when you throw in this write line, it's written to the browser. Okay, so it's not a part of the application. It's not part of anything the user is intended to see. But this is also a very and professional way to debug, of course. With a new version which will create a map file, and you can have a connection between the Pascal code and the generated JavaScript code, you will have a much easier way to generate. You can actually debug real life and step through the code step by step and check every line of code to find out where it is. Okay. That was the Canvas project type. Let me create a command line project. That's another thing we will have in the next release. Now we have 3 fixed project types, and these are, so to say, hard-coded in the project, what kind of project to create. In the next version, you can create your own repository for various project types. Those project types, the custom project types, those are script-based. So you can actually create your own advanced script with interaction with the user, and you can then create a pretty advanced project type setup. So when you create a new project, you can generate 10 different files with different settings and different input, where depending on how you set up your script. So,
could you demonstrate something like red in this?
Yes, I can do that. Can take that first. So if you take a visual project, you'll have created some files and so on. The difference between the specific thing about a visual type is that you have these forms. Okay, so this is a visual designer. So in the visual designer, you can actually pick things from a toolbar, and you can put them on this designer. We are not entirely happy with this designer yet, but we have lots of layers we have to work with to get this working. And our initial plan was to have a kind of a wireframe solution, a mock-up solution where you create just an overlay and of what you intend to deploy. And since you are deploying different things on iPhone, on Android, and on the Windows Phone, you just sketch out the things you want to have, and you take care of the pixel perfection in another session. So this is one sprite. This is another. So, and this is a framework that exists in JavaScript already. Okay, and we have created a wrapper for that framework. So you can work directly with that framework through your Object Pascal code. Okay, so we have all the things you need to rotation, scaling, etc., etc. So this is what it looks like. This is JavaScript and this is HTML, and it's pretty smooth movements. It's pretty high frequency of as a high frames per second rate. So this is good enough for lots of projects. Okay.
Except that it works for browsers. It works on all mobiles.
On all mobiles. Yeah, it depends on the browser. This is all browser dependent. And as web developers know from before, various browsers have various support for various things. So browser is one thing, hardware acceleration is another thing. So not everything you can do will work on every browser or every computer. It's the same thing as Google Maps with WebGL and those solutions. You need to have the hardware and the browser that supports those things. Some browsers, they have a fallback routine. So if there is no hardware acceleration supported, they will have a software supported solutions instead of that hardware solution. But that's the difference from browser to browser. So you need to know, our work here is to try to fill all those gaps. Okay, so we want to make a layer between which knows what each browser can handle. So we actually have a kind of a driver system. So if you deploy to Internet Explorer, you will have some settings due to touch events and gestures. And if you deploy to an iOS applications, a
Safari application, you will have another set of things. So even though there is a specification for how these things should be handled in the browser are, as you know, different. So you need to know a bit what your browser is like and what the browser supports.
So you compile it to a specific browser?
Yes, you can do both. You can, for now you just compile it and it's one single compilation. We have plans to select different style sheets and different targets, which you can do, and then it will pick out the pieces you need for that platform. But you can also check runtime in your code. You can start off by checking if this is an iPad, if this is an iPhone, if this is if this is this, if this is that. So you can do both. You can also have reorganization of your screen layout as a runtime. Just like responsive design is very popular these days. As you resize the screen, you can reorganize your content, and you have a solution for that in here too. So at the resize event you get from the browser, you can reorganize your code, and that you can do by code. So that's a development decision at the end. Would you like to create a dedicated solution that is pixel perfect for this browser and this screen size, or would you like to have one big code which you runtime check for different opportunities? Yeah. Was there another question? Oh. Okay, so this is one kind of library that is wrapped, and we have there follows a lot of demos in this installation of Smart, which is easy to dig into, easy to follow, and easy to see how things are done. Okay, not that one. This
basic knowledge you need to have. You need to know something about JavaScript.
You don't have to, but as with everything you develop, everything you work with in development business, the more you know, the better it is. Okay, so I work with Windows 32 development, and I don't need to know assembler, I don't need to know registration, and I don't need to know how the memory is handling. But the more I know about it, the better I can do my coding, okay? And the same thing is here. You can just pick and build up your application without knowing anything about web design, anything about browsers or JavaScript. But if you do know bits and pieces of it, you can create smarter solutions. Because this is actually a quite powerful framework. You can do pretty awesome stuff with this tool. And if you think a little bit outside the box and create a different, use your code and use the abilities in different ways, you can create smart solutions. So that's the thing. So the more you know, the better it is, but you don't have to know everything before you start. That's another other side of it. In web development, you have server side and you have client side. For now, Smart Mobile Studio is 100% client side. You don't have any server involved in that solution. So when you deploy your application, you have to access it by a server, of course, to download the application the first time, but then it's 100% client side. Okay, so everything you generate here on, it doesn't require a server to run, which lots of other solutions require. So that's one of the advantages you have with Smart. Accelerometer. This is a pretty dull demonstration because you have to use the accelerometer in the device to have this box falling in different angles. But this is one example of things that are browser specific. Okay, some browsers support the accelerometer through the browser. Other browsers have no support for accelerometer. The same with multi-touch. Some browsers have support for multi-touch, where you can use several fingers to paint at the same time, and some browsers are not. So these are things that are good to know, good to have a chart of a table of which browsers support what, so we know how to work around it. Let me see if I can pick up that multi-touch support. This is actually a pretty cool app. If you run this on your tablet and give it to your kids will be busy for hours. You can put several fingers on this. Since I have a mouse, this is only one finger, but you can draw different things on this. A pretty bad response here, but on the mobile browser, this is pretty cool. So you can put 5 fingers on at the same time, and you can drag them around, and you will have a track of all those 5 fingers in different colors. Okay, this is pretty easy. This is made pretty easy with Smart, and you wrap up the touch API that's in the browser, and you work through your Pascal code against that API. Okay, yes.
What about this solution in terms of language is easier compared to the Typescript from Microsoft or Dart from Google?
I think Pascal is tighter and better. Of course, one of our advantages and one of the reasons for us to choose Pascal as a language is that we have worked with Pascal for a long time. It's a language we know very well, and we have lots of code already in Pascal. Many of the demos we have used here actually are based on Pascal code and Delphi code that are perhaps 10 years old. You have those maze algorithms, and you have several algorithms which you actually can just copy from your old Pascal source into Smart. There are few modifications you have to do. Some things are supported in Smart and not in Delphi, and some things are supported in traditional Delphi and not in Smart. So you have to do some modification to make it work. Among those things are several data types. JavaScript don't have as many data types as traditional Pascal has. So you have several more data types in traditional Pascal. So we have created aliases. So if you have extended or real or float, every one of these will be converted into number when you compile the project. So that's one of the reasons. You have lots of code online for Pascal code for different solutions, and you can use them and reuse them pretty easy in your Smart application. TypeScript, that's a language which just tighten up JavaScript, if I have understood that correctly. I haven't developed it, I haven't investigated it myself thoroughly, but that's the impression I have. So you can't do inheritance, and you can't do polymorphism, and you can't do all those things in TypeScript, if I have understood that correctly. That are things you can do in Pascal. In Pascal, you create your object classes and you create your architecture in a full OOP manner. That is not possible in plain JavaScript. You have to bend and tweak to get that work in JavaScript and TypeScript. So that's the reason for us to choose Pascal. Okay. One thing we haven't spoken about, we have spoken about deployment through web browsers, okay? The solutions we have seen now, this is an embedded web browser you have here. You can open it in your mobile browser, you can open it in your desktop browser. It is possible to deploy these projects as native apps via App Store and via Google Play. And to do that, you have to use PhoneGap. Have you heard of PhoneGap before? Yeah. PhoneGap is a solution that creates a layer between the hardware and the web application you are using. So they actually give you access to the camera, the accelerometer, the gyroscope, and the compass, and the camera, and the contacts, everything. Everything you can have on the phone, you get access to. So what we do in Smart is that we wrap those APIs, we wrap those JavaScript codes, and we create Pascal classes, and you can work with those Pascal classes through your project. And when you have done that, when you have created your solution as an web application, you ship that application, you upload it actually to a build server, which PhoneGap has, and it compiles this into iOS, BlackBerry, into Android, and into all the solutions. And the advantage of that is that they actually maintains newer editions of hardware and newer versions of the software. So when Windows Phone was released previously, they created a Windows solution. So you could just upload your project as it is, and they instantly developed a Windows application natively from that. So that's one solution you can use. And with PhoneGap, you get a native runnable application, but the code itself, it's not converted into native application. So we don't work with edit boxes and buttons from the operating system itself. You work with HTML code, but the HTML code is wrapped into a big application, which is run natively on your phone. So it's a pretty neat system, and it gives you lots of opportunities. And so there are some discussion. Okay, what's best? This is hybrid solutions when you deploy it like that. When you create a web application and you deploy it like a native application. Facebook recently, they went the other way. They had a hybrid solution, and they went back to deploying a native application with Xcode and Java. Others have gone the other way. When Apple tried to update their map solution lately in iOS 6, and Google was kicked out, Google actually created more. They put more effort into getting the maps.google.com even better. So they added more support into that Google app to create a better HTML5 application. So if you go to maps.google.com now, you get the question, will you download this application and have it on your home screen as a native application? And when you do that, you get the application as an HTML file application, and it runs and it looks like the old Apple Maps application. Okay.
But it's not native.
But it's not native, no. It's not native. And actually the Maps solution and other solutions, they require that you are online. Okay, so even if you start that application up, you have to connect to the server, okay? That's pretty natural with Google Maps. You can't download all the maps and have them locally on your phone. But for other solutions, it's much smarter to have all the code locally on your phone. There are some shopping list applications out there today, and you write your shopping list at home, and when you get to the mall and lose your server connection, you suddenly can't open your application. So that's the advantage of having things locally. People are talking about the instant web connection, that people are online all the time. I don't agree. People are very often offline and very often not in a network. So being able to run things locally, that's pretty important.
This
okay.
compiler, is it enclosed in the program?
Yes, the compiler is in the program. There are a couple of games today that are actually distributed by Google Play. If you search in Google Play for OP4JS, you will get a few hits. Those are examples of canvas-based games which are wrapped in PhoneGap and deployed to App Store. Let me see. We have one of them as a demo here. Okay. Yes, this is one example of an application that is created and deployed through App Store. Created in Pascal and created in Smart, and it's drawn on the canvas with sprites. Okay. I'll show you. Okay, we have another example of existing. There are lots of existing JavaScript frameworks which we already have wrapped up and deployed in Smart. All from media players. You have WebGL. We have started to wrap that up. It's not entirely finished yet. we have SVG. That's a thing we're working on. But I was looking for box 2D. Let me see.
You mean vectorized?
Yeah. Box 2D, have you heard of Box 2D? That's vectorized physical motions framework in JavaScript. And we have wrapped that solution, those JavaScript files into this solution. So you have now full support for Box 2D in Smart. So the possibilities are quite big with this solution. If you see, close.
How good is it in shading, gray, etc.?
What do you think of?
Vectorized.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, it works. So I haven't encountered any problems with it. So it's a good user experience to use it, and it's no overlap. Actually, we have done some not with Box 2D, but with jQuery. We did a test to see to compare the things that are created by Smart and things that are created in jQuery, and we ended up with a smaller deployable from Smart, and we ended up with a faster response in Smart. So the solution we have ended up with in Smart, we have been through various cycles and investigated several solutions to get where we are today. And the solution we have today is actually pretty good. And with the obfuscation and the smart linking, you get very small deliverables, and yeah, they are pretty neat. So compared to, for instance, jQuery, which is a very popular framework, you have a much smaller piece. Okay.
What are the databases you can use?
Databases. If you see, this is the box to the wrapper. The interesting thing about here, we have a language feature called external. So what external do is that you actually can just create, you can just define your class in Pascal code, and you can define it as external. And that's all you have to do. Then the method will stay implemented in JavaScript, and when you call this class and these methods through your Pascal code, you will be forwarded, so to say, to the JavaScript implementation. So this is a very neat way to wrap existing JavaScript libraries. If there are any JavaScript libraries that are interesting to use in a smart project, you can just create a wrapper, define the type and the classes you want to have in your Pascal project, and you can define them as external. And you can then have the JavaScript code as it is in JavaScript. Okay. You asked about database solutions. Okay. The normal web browser doesn't have an integrated web browser. Okay, you have a few things called storage. You have internal storage and session storage, and you can use those storage routines to save data, and those data will be preserved locally on the phone from time to time. If you start up your application a few weeks later, that data will still be there. Some browsers have some support for web SQL solutions, but if you want to go heavy into large databases, you have to use PhoneGap. PhoneGap will create an API for the database on the phone, and then you can have pretty much data stored in that database. You can also use, we have a solution here for a client server. REM objects is currently supported, but you have also other server solutions. So if you create a server solutions, you can have your smart client interact with that server solution, and you can store your data on the server. JSON is designed to work with JavaScript. That is a JavaScript notation of the transaction. So you can actually create a variable in Smart, and you can assign a plain JSON string to that variable, and you will have instant access to all the elements in that JSON structure. So you don't have to predefine all those methods and all those fields in the JSON structure. You can just look them up directly. Okay. So that's the other solution you have to use on server to talk to. We have REM objects. We have 2 or 3 other solutions too, which can be used as a server to store your data on the server.
Components for developers?
Yeah, components for developers. We have DataSnap, which is famous among Delphi users. The important thing is that most of these servers, they have a tool for generating client-side JavaScript code. Okay, so if you set up a server and you find that point where you can create the JavaScript client-side code, that's all you need. You can take that JavaScript code into Smart and you can connect directly. The tool we have here, REM objects, import REM objects, that actually parses the JavaScript code generated by REM objects and creates the Pascal class you need in Smart to wrap that JavaScript code. So that's a pretty neat solution. We have other solutions which we will deploy as well as such tools. So we just have to find time to make all of these solutions. But DataSnap is one solution. Components for developers is another solution. Yeah. Okay. I think I've been through the demos I want to show you. I never got to show you the let's go show new project, the command line project. Yes. This is actually a pretty simple command line project. You can type in your command and execute it. Okay. This is not what normal users want to see on their phone, probably, but as a developer this is very neat if you want to test things. Okay, if you want to do some pretty simple stuff, you can create a solution here where you can experiment and testing immediately in an old-fashioned way. This application type has a couple of methods: application starting, populate console, and process command. The populate console, that's what's happened the first time it's started. Okay. Was that correct? Yeah. Process command. Here you can have here you get the command in as a string parameter. The solution now is that it just deploys, it just shows the command you do. Okay, but you can do other stuff. Let me see. Okay, this is the inherited method from custom console application, which does a write line of the command. Okay, a pretty simple override. Here we do a reverse string. If you put in hello, you get the reverse that. Okay. So you can create your own interpreter here, and you can create a case statement which checks which command you send in, and you can do whatever you want in here. You can actually do, this is what I was going to prove to you. If I have time, string, okay, an asm section. Okay, you see what's going on? I created a variable s of type string. Then I created an asm section, which is pure JavaScript. Okay, in this we have pure JavaScript. And when I prefix with this @ symbol, this will refer to this variable, and this will refer to that command. Okay? Yeah, it's a kind of a pointer. Because what happens when the compiler converts all of this to JavaScript? It works its way through all of these lines of codes. It has a big tree, of course, if you know compile technique. But when it comes to an asm section, it just reads it as it is. But to avoid complications, you could write it like this. This will work in most cases. But if you want to use the obfuscation, the compiler will interpret an unsigned variable as a JavaScript variable. Okay, so we will have it obfuscated, and then it won't work. Okay, let me see if this was correct. Okay, so the JavaScript code was eval, which is actually an execution of the command we have put in. The result is stored in the s variable, and it's written back to the console. So if I type 1 + 1, you'll get 2. And this is the JavaScript fun. If you type 1 + string 1, you will have 11. Okay, let's try if this works. No, it didn't want to. Empty array plus empty array. Yeah, of course, it's an empty string. That's why we don't see it. So this is pretty neat. You can actually do you can do a lot of stuff. So now you can actually write JavaScript code directly into this alert. Done. Yeah, alert. Okay. Finish from back row. Are there 10 minutes for questions, isn't it? Yeah. Questions?
If I would try to wrap simple JavaScript method, function, normal function, that returns an object or a Boolean value based upon some parameters, how I can wrap it in a strongly typed language as opposed to Pascal? Because the strongly typed language of the compiler adds a lot of good stuff on the compiling, type checking, and so on. But when I try to wrap something that is completely dynamic, I have some type mismatch.
That's why it's a bad idea to wrap jQuery, for instance. Because if you want to wrap jQuery, you have to keep track of all the fields in the jQuery class in the Pascal class. So you get a lot of overhead when you do that. As I said previously, JavaScript is prototype-based, so it's an other kind of an object-oriented thought. In the next release of Smart, we will have what we call a Stub Class, where you can create a class which is not based on the root, on the T object. And if you use that class for your construction, for your class, you will have a prototype-based JavaScript solution generated. Okay, so you don't get all this overhead with all the VMT that is generated. So you can do that. But when you are wrapping a class, you create a field of a type variant. And when you have a variant field in a Pascal class, that variant can actually hold a whole class, a whole instance of a JavaScript. So when you wrap a class that is written in JavaScript, you create a field that's of type variant, and you assign the instance, the JavaScript instance, you assign to that variable, and then you can connect with that instance through the variant variable. And the variant variable is unique in the compiler, so you actually don't have to wrap all the fields. It will immediately recognize each field and each method in the JavaScript code. So you can, in the Pascal code, just declare a variable name of type variant, and you can, in the asm section, you can take a name and assign some JavaScript class to it, and without any other work you can refer to the name variable with name.first name, name.second name, etc. later on. So that's the advantage of the variant type. It's pretty special. In earlier editions, I'm pretty tired today. In previous editions of Smart, we had to use TObject as a class, and with the TObject, you had to map every method and every field to get the connection between the JavaScript and the Pascal class. But with the new variant type, you don't have to do that. You can just refer to the variant, and you have all those types immediately. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Other questions? Okay, you first.
Excuse me, my English.
Okay. So.
Is easy to create a small business application for manage a small small database on device?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that is easy. You have all you need to create those things in a very easy manner. And when you talk about database applications and visual applications, you are into the visual project type, where you can use the RAD feature of Smart, where you can drag and drop components and labels and buttons and work with things. So that's definitely easy. And beside that, when you have created that, you have created it for all platforms. That's pretty important to remember, because if you create something dedicated with Xcode for iOS, you have just created it for Xcode and for iOS. With Smart, you have created it for BlackBerry, Android, Windows, Web at the same time. So from the same code, you can deploy it to several platforms. So I think that's a pretty important feature to remember, because if you're going to manage several project types for several platforms, that's a lot of work to do. Okay, so you have an advantage that you can maintain one single source. So yes.
But the question is, how is simple to read and write data when I'm creating a business app with a lot of fields and I want to say first name, last name, address, and so on? Is a more visually process or code-oriented process? I have to get field and write on the UI and get the field and put on the
You don't have that visual connection to the database as you have in Delphi. No live bindings. Not yet. Yes, you have to write it.
Usually you can use not too much fields.
Yes.
On a mobile device.
Yeah, that's important. When you're creating a mobile, it's very important to cut down, keep it simple. That's of course important. And with live bindings, it's pretty popular to develop live bindings and visual tools. But in my experience, I have cut down on those things. I like to have things in code, actually. So that's one of the things I use less and less, this immediate visual binding to database fields from visual fields. But we have the plan. We are working on solutions where you can connect those directly. So the easy part here is the adapter from the database to the business code, because that's instant. If you have a JSON object on the disk and you write this into the business structure of the object, you have an instant structure in your code. You don't have to write the adapter for that transition. So the work you have to do here is to map those against the visual fields. Yeah. We have tried to blog about things and keep things updated on our website with examples and documentation, which we release constantly. So instead of having a big help button with a lot of documentation, you have a lot of things as articles on our web page. And just ask if there is anything you wonder about, and we can create the documentation you need and provide an example. Because we have been working with this for a very long time, so we are very found with the project, and we are very familiar with the project. So there are lots of questions we take for granted. But what don't you know that already? But of course we have to tell things step by step. So if there's anything you want to know more about, even if it's plain basic, let us know, and we will create examples and tutorials for those questions to accommodate it. Yes. Okay.